So yeah, Knack 1 was a pile of garbage. But guess what? In the E3 before the game came out, Jeff here did an interview with Mark. So let's see what he has to say about Knack 2 before we go into the game.
Totino's!
I don't know what it is.
Product placement too.
They're an old thing from the 90s that are brought back.
So first of all, tell us, why is it called Knack II?
Well, you know, it's been fun looking at the boards. They had lots of helpful
Because it's a sequel.
Jova, considering what Sony did with Santa Monica did with God of War 2018, that should not be a given anymore, I guess.
That was kind of a dumb question from the get-go.
Hey Pedro, why is Mario 2 called Mario 2?
Fun fact, well, that was for the sake of the joke. I'm guessing it was part of the scripted. Fun fact, like Mark just said, he was actually thinking, I don't know, I was thinking maybe of calling it Knack 2 Electric Boogaloo, but then I thought Knack 2 was more fitting.
I mean, it would have fitted because the Ratchet & Clank games also have a tendency of making fun title sequels.
Yeah, I wouldn't have minded, and you know, Knack seemed to be like it was trying to go for that Jack and Daxter tone of being playful, if not serious at times.
It's,
Yeah, there you go.
Oh yeah, there you go. Remember, Shuri, this was supposed to be the new
It's a
Crash
huge
Bandicoot.
topic for another day, but to keep in mind that practically all the titles for the sequels of Ratchet & Clank game had to be changed in Europe because of sexual innuendos.
keep in mind, Shiro, this guy was a programmer and designer on the original Crash Bandicoot trilogy.
And Sonic 2? I think?
Yeah, he was a designer in Sonic 2, yeah. He was actually the one who convinced Naka to come to work at the Sega Technical Institute at the time. He's an industry legend by this point.
Yeah.
He's just not a very good...
Well, the thing is, Shiro, here's the thing. He's a brilliant programmer slash designer. Here's the problem. He's not very good at actually being in charge of a project. He's better off being an actual, you know, working under people, not being the head of a project. That's my diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
What are his writing quirks as well? Because he's also a writer here.
Oh, no. If there's one thing he needs to stop doing is writing. Because he sucks bad at it.
Didn't he write something before the Knack
No,
game?
Knack game. We've already talked about this. The Knack games were the first time he wrote, and
properly.
He needs to stop writing because he's not good at it. Or at the very least, get someone who does.
Fun fact, actually, in the mid-2010s, he was the lead architect and producer of the PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita video game consoles. How ironic that the one he called Vita is the one that died earlier.
So yeah, basically, the basic gist of it is that despite he even admitted, the reception was mixed. So yeah, he's even admitting it.
Mix, that's putting it incredibly generously.
Well, to be fair, Jova, the game was around the 60s. It wasn't like 4 or anything like that.
Well, here's the thing, Pedro. Here's the thing. First of all, 60s in actual terms would be a failing grade, but aside from that, okay, sure, that's counting the critics, but how about the actual people buying the game? Like,
True.
I mean, the consumer response was not a happy one, to say the least, because let me remind you, Shuri, they were advertising Knack as to be like the new Crash Bandicoot. Like, literally, part of Knack's color scheme is meant to make him look
Those are
like
some
Crash
big shoes to
Bandicoot.
fill.
Not only that,
Not
this
just that,
was bundled with
Knack was supposed to
PS4's on launch.
Keep in mind, PS4 launching meant that Knack was supposed to be the diamond tip of a series of new IPs that Sony was going to produce, which turned out, for example, to be, Horizon Zero Dawn. But Knack was not the one that people remember for the good stuff.
Let me finish this. So basically, yeah, he's at the very least decided to try his best to address the feedback, because there's a lot more platforming, as you guys can see. He even got a co-writer for this game, by the way. He wrote the entire thing on his own for the first game, but for this game he got a co-writer. So one of the God of War writers. So clearly this must be better, right?
For reference sake, he's also an executive producer for The Last Guardian, and he's a technical producer on Death Stranding.
Well, yeah, he's producer for a lot of Sony things, because remember, he's the engineer of the PS4 consoles. So
I wonder, will he be able to top himself with the PS5?
We'll see. But for now, let's just stop this and head into the game. I would like to start this commentary by dedicating it to the wonderful gents at Sony Europe, who so gracefully gave me this game for free.
Yes, it happened again.
Sony. Let's see, when Sony aren't leaking games ahead of time, Sonic Mania Plus, they are giving games for free. Like this and Uncharted.
I mean,
If only Sega of Europe could be
it
this
was also
generous.
Japan studio. Oh, why?
Okay, folks.
What have we-
So
what-
you
what
saw
have-
the
what have-
interview with Mark.
What has Japan studio done?
So
for you?
basically, everybody, since the Knack stuff that we've done so far has been pretty much 100% negative, we decided to bring Shiroi here because Shiroi is, of course, a big Crash Bandicoot fan, and this is supposed to be the new Crash Bandicoot. Clearly, this would be up her alley, right?
But Pedro, what about the original Knack that was supposed to be Crash Bandicoot, but actually got a mixed at best reception and then got a lot
Why
of...
don't you see, Java? Look at this new and improved Knack sequel, baby.
Listen to that violin! Doesn't that give Shadow of the Colossus a run for its freaking money?
Looks pretty good, right?
It's not that the
Oh,
music.
sorry,
To be fair, it's not that the music is bad per se. It's just that it's bland and forgettable.
No. The music is
The
fine, but you...
composer now it's only one, Anthony Wills.
Let me put it like this. The way those violins were, it sets up pretty much the tone for not only this game, but the entire mindset around this game. A game that is way too big for its britches and tries even harder than the first one to be taken seriously, not just in story, but in the video game market.
So yeah, the relics power everything. We already know
A friend
this.
of mine, the doctor, spent his whole life studying them.
So basically this is just a small recap.
And one day, he discovered how to connect them.
And then I got spider powers. Oops, wrong Joss Keaton character.
And here's the first thing you'll notice: the Doctor's character model is way better in this game.
You know what?
I would argue that it's worse, especially in the facial department.
It's more detailed at least. I mean, because the original Dr. Vargas looked like a PS3 model, honestly.
Yes, but at least it wasn't this ugly.
I think I see where Tio's coming from. Yes, they have better fidelity, but in some ways that fidelity
Do not
hurts.
let the doctor.
Oh, and Lucas turned into Hiccup from the How to Train Your Dragon franchise, apparently.
Lucas, your hair! What happened to your hair? It looks like it got singed on the
they
eyebrows.
became next-gen hair.
And guess what, Jova? We're doing it yet again. We're starting in the middle of the story, and then we're gonna flash back to the beginning as a how did we get here type of beginning.
You know, at the very least, with the first Knack game, yeah, we started off a bit, but then we immediately went to the single
Also,
player.
yeah, there's co-op. in
There's
this game.
co-op, so might as well
That's-
show it off, I guess.
That-
All right.
that's- That's actually an
Co-op-
improvement.
That's the problem. Co-op is never explained in story, in a sense that you just have a blue player, Knack, around you, and during cutscene you just fuse together, and the characters never acknowledge the other Knack. So if anything, it's more like an afterthought than anything else.
Guys, isn't that cute? A still image of Knack sitting, reading a book for the tutorial section. I mean, on the one hand, that's cute, but it's so weird that it's static. Believe it or not, Shiroi, despite how the effort of this game may make you believe, make no mistake, this was always something that was meant to have a lot of big push from Sony as supposedly their next mascot. And yet, the effort put into it feels like they did not want it to. Like, I mean, I know it may seem like a nitpick to get all over this static image, but let's compare this to a lot of their other first-party mascots. Crash Bandicoot. Like, even Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation 1 had special animations for so much as looking up at a computer screen. Jak and Daxter, well, do I even need to say much more about how awesomely
The
animated
different right
Jak and
animation
Daxter
just
is?
for getting the orbs first game.
So yeah, like I said, basically the co-op is all about the
Chapter
two.
1-1, the invasion.
So yeah, think of the co-op as basically just a player helping you. Basically, I dragged my brother in here so he could help me show off the co-op.
So, Shiroi, since you've seen, pretty much the good foundation, aka Dark Lord Shadow 1's reveal of Knack 1, and since Pedro filled you in on the gist,
Yep.
what's your overall feel of Knack so far? Like,
Well, I mean, the gameplay is about as bland as bland could be. The story is,
it's a special kind of bad.
I don't think they know I don't think they knew what they were doing.
Let me put it like this,
And I
Shiroi.
very much agree that I think there were a lot of different stories here that they kind of just threw together at a board.
Shiroi, I have an interview with Japan Studio that addresses that, but you know what? I'm going to save that for when we've, gotten to see a good look at this game, because let me put it like this, Shiroi. I'm gonna put it like this. Make no mistake, Japan Studio were desperate with this game. Like, the interview I will later read to you guys pretty much shows them at a desperate breaking point. And you'd think that because of that, they would have put so much heart into improving this game, and technically they do. Here's the problem. It's a game specifically meant to cover their rear ends for specifically the things consumers were complaining about.
Not just
Here's
that,
the
the big problem is that this franchise in general is a lost cause, no matter what you do at this point.
Yeah, hey, so Shiroi, believe it or not, this game was meant to be an atonement for the first game. How did this game do? It
Not very well.
It sold less than 1% of the sales of the original game in its first
Yes, I had
week.
it.
Okay, but for the sake of actually getting some addressing the positive aspects, yes,
Right.
a lot of the problems of the gameplay of the first game were addressed. For one, Knack's
Don't die
ability.
anymore in 2 hits.
Exactly. Knack's ability to rebuild himself from the relics is actually a gameplay thing now, as it should have been in the first game. So
And hey, now
dying
that
is
is-
actually a lot. So the game is a lot more forgiving difficulty-wise this time.
And here's another thing that's good. Knack can actually change sizes, something else that should have been in the first game. However, with that comes with it an issue here. Okay, folks, you remember how in the first Knack game, one of the best things about that game was how big you could get to the point where you were, like, big enough to dwarf even Godzilla? Well, here's the thing now. Sure, Knack can change sizes, except for the most part, you're gonna be stuck with, smaller Knack and then big Knack. Or essentially, how big Knack is with how many relics you've collected. Which means you can't really do anything in between if you prefer the like or look of it or whatnot. And, okay, so you think, well, Jova, that doesn't sound too bad. It just means that it's limited. Let's just say, folks, they managed to make it in a way where you almost wish they didn't do it that way, because there's going to be a lot more puzzles, per se, based on your sizes.
Mm-hmm.
So, Pedro, now we tell our audience, is it the variant of actually fun puzzles, or just puzzles that are there to waste your time?
We'll get to it. But the point is, another thing that I did appreciate is the adding of a double jump, because you actually have a double jump in this one. Well, actually, you have a little jump in the other one as well. But aside from the double jump, you also have a twirl that you can do for extra air distance. So
Oh, here's
platforming.
another cool thing.
So platforming in
shield.
this game is very comfortable. Like, and I'm about to show it off actually. Hold on.
There's also
There you
another
go.
cool thing like the parry, or really it's more of a shield, but they call it the parry, so I digress.
That's
So
because
you're not resort only to dodge in the game.
that's because if you press L1 at the right time, right as they're about to get hit, it ricochets to the enemy.
Wow.
We...
I mean, that's a nice mechanic in and of itself, especially for a game centered around combat like this one. Again, here's part of the issue though. It suffers from the same problem Sonic 4 Episode 2 did. A lot of the improvements are stuff that should have been in the first game. And I dare say this does it worse than Sonic 4 Episode 2, because at least Sonic 4 Episode 2 was actually fun in the overall regard to me anyway. This game is not. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself.
Sonic 4 I didn't find Sonic 4 Episode 2 fun, but at least that game was short. Well, okay, well, actually, the Wing Fortress.
It's more fun
sorry,
than
not
Episode
Wing
1.
Fortress, Sky Fortress.
As for me, I had legit fun with Sonic 4 Episode 2, but
But I'll still
regardless-
take it over this, because if anything, because it's short.
I actually haven't properly played
You're not really missing much.
or Episode 1, really. I own both of them, but I haven't properly...
You're
I
not
like-
you're not
I
missing
like
much.
Oh
Speaking
yeah,
of
that's
some of-
right. They also changed the Sunstone.
Yes, in the
Oh,
original
right.
game, the Sunstone Gate was used for special abilities. In here, it's actually a barrier. Basically, as long as you have Sun Energy, instead of losing health, you'll lose Sun Energy. So it's again, this just feels like an
I'm not too okay
I'll
with this
admit,
change.
this is one change that I feel is kind of a downgrade, because, with the original game, you could actually do those awesome attacks that could allow you to clear house on enemies.
Yeah.
Whereas now, the way you actually get those is...
I
more
mean,
obscure.
I don't say this in a sense that it should have been removed, these new defensive abilities, but let the player choose what they want, a more defensive or aggressive player style.
My guess, Theo, is
Kinda
it's
goes-
to address the fact that people didn't like how easy it was to die in the first game.
You know, it's funny, Tio. Your issue there kind of mirrors my issue of how you don't really get to choose neck sizes. I mean, sure, you can choose smaller, bigger neck, but nothing in
Yeah,
between.
here it's
like-
more scripted than anything.
And there you go.
by the
When
way,
you
the
when you open up a door, God of
Okay,
War style, the two knacks fuse together for some reason. And I don't understand why. But
So, let's recap, folks. These two knacks fuse, and yet they couldn't be bothered to give maybe a story acknowledgement to this.
There's literally no story explanation in the slightest. The second knack doesn't even show in cutscenes, and the fused knack doesn't show in cutscenes, only for these QTs, like for the opening the door. Otherwise, it might as well doesn't exist.
I know it seems minor, folks, but again, this was meant to be the next mascot. Like, if there's one thing that was consistent, at least up until this point, it's like, well, whenever a new first-party Sony game was rising up that, was looking to be their mascot, you could bet your rear ends that there'd be a lot of effort and character put into it. Like, this just feels lackluster, and yes, I'm talking
And I
about
honestly
both
think
games.
this is very offensive in regards of Japan Studio, because while other teams like Guerrilla Games actually got attention and money for things like this, Japan Studio instead got this to work with. for the
Again,
game.
reminder, Japan Studio helped.
I mean,
work on
yes,
Gravity
you can
Rush,
argue
which
they
was another
collaborated
Sony
with From
first-party
Software
game.
for Bloodborne. Yes, and that's really great. But I mean, in terms of Japan Studio doing things on their own, things like when they did, for example, with Ape Escape or Legend of Dragoon, where is that initiative, foundation of money, and
Theo, once again, when it comes to the JRPGs, that's because Ken
I
Motomura
don't mean
left.
JRPGs in general. The ability of creating new IPs on their own without necessary collaborations that spark through different kind of things in general. Like, I mean, I'm also fine with the collaboration of their own, but if it's all that Japan Studio has to go through these days, I'm sorry, it feels just sad.
Oh, relic energy. Hey, Pedro, is there also a power-up that allows you to hunt relics of all things?
There are no relic energy is basically a skill tree. Basically,
Yep.
it's an unnecessary addition, if you ask me. I mean, what's wrong with just getting power-ups over the course of the game?
I just think it's structured.
Pedro, we
I just
do
think
get
it's
power-ups over the
structured
course of the game.
in a bad way, because once again, the game where this game takes major inspiration from, God of War, the God of War games also have technically skill trees, but they function in a different way. The game actually gives you the weapon or ability equipped, and then you level it up through the course of the game, and the experience that's given to you, it's consistent. You can choose what to level up at what time. Here it's much more scripted, and both in the way you gain the experience and the way you power up.
You start with the way of speed part, and you can only move to the other next batch of skills when you complete the entirety of the current area you are at. So basically,
So,
you might
unlike
as
the
well.
first
You might
game,
as
you
well.
don't even got a choice.
Then what's the which makes the question: if you're gonna make it this scripted, what's the point of it being a skill tree then?
Also, Shiroi, no, your eyes did not deceive you. You just saw lag in a cutscene.
Yeah.
Get used
Well,
to that.
remember, Lightning Returns has lag in the credits. So,
Right.
you know.
Shiroi, that's something. Lightning Returns was an older game, yes. And let me put it like this, Shiroi.
An
This
older
is a
game
game-
from Square.
I mean, Lightning Returns had some excuses compared to this game. I know.
I
feel
don't
dirty
think
much.
so.
Well, Shiroi, I feel dirty saying it, but Lightning Returns had more reason to be laggy than this game does, in the sense that Lightning Returns came to multiple consoles. This only came to the PS4.
Oh, there you go, the parry mechanic. Again, another thing taken straight from God of War specifically too. For projectiles, as soon as they get close to you, just by pressing the parrying button, Knack will basically simply reflect bounce the projectile back to the to Ushodi, which is always nice to me. That's kind of
And here's one of the stupid things that comes from the ability to change size. You are required to shrink down to areas like that, even though, in the original game, Knack probably would have been able to just climb up the wall just fine. Now, it doesn't seem that bad here, but trust me, it gets taxing later.
Not just that, again, the size is always scripted in some kind of fashion. You never feel as if you're actually progressing like in the first game.
Master square buttons.
There we go.
Look, I know that God of War 3 gets a lot of flack for QTEs, but at the very least, when you did those QTEs, boy, golly,
Not
boy,
just that,
howdy,
the action
they were
was much
cinematic
faster
beforehand.
in that kind of regard. Here it's slower.
Yeah, I mean, they felt like you had more actual weight on it with the interaction.
And once again, the QTEs actually reflected what the action was going on. For example, the square button was tied to an action tied to using the actual blades, which was the square button, for example. So here instead, it's just do things.
So, is the other Knack dead now, since, you know, he kind of dispersed himself of both red and blue?
No idea.
Again, we'll never know because, hey, it's a co-op, but we're not even going to address it. Now, okay, so I know what you're going to say, but there are plenty of co-op games that don't explain stuff. And you know what? Fine, yeah. Here's the thing, though. Those games don't often really call for it. Here, I mean, the fact that they bothered to actually include cutscenes for this little blue Knack, you'd think that they would have maybe just offered a little bit of text? It wouldn't even
Yeah,
take that
like countless beat 'em up games like Streets of Rage or Final Fight gives very simple excuses on why you can have co-op and have a partner roaming around you beating people. That's because the story had different protagonists that could have been chose as playable characters. Why does this game not have a simple, like a 5-way line like saying, oh, the Doctor in the meantime found a way to replicate Knack to double his chances or something?
And here's another thing that annoys me. Whenever they
Megatron, is
wanted...
that you?
Oh my god.
Yeah, right. So, but here's the basic gist of it, right? Knack. Oh, there you go.
Oh, then...
And now we're
got
going to
you.
flashback
Knack
to 6
dies.
months earlier.
Oh goody, the time skips.
Anyway, Shiroi,
Oh.
allow me to sum it up this particular game to you. It's the gameplay of Knack, but with the story of Bayformers.
At its worst.
You know,
Oh,
I have
God.
to say, considering, you know, how wacky Knack looks and how goofy the humans are, the environments look bland as all heck and don't really mesh well with them at all.
Yeah.
Are you
They're
talking
trying.
about this?
When it comes to the human models, you can tell they're going for that DreamWorks
Also,
Pixar look.
guys, look, the water, it's not even moving properly. It's like it's a plastic bit.
You can tell they're trying to go for the modern CG animated film typical look. You know, I mean,
DreamWorks,
It's so
in that
uninspired, though, in this particular case.
in that
Yeah.
opening scene, Lucas looked just like Ickup. So anyway, yeah, Lucas was once again voiced by Josh Keaton, and Ryder is voiced by Travis
Great.
Willingham.
Yeah, the cast, I think pretty much every returning character gets their original.
Yeah,
design.
everybody returns to Reprise the World.
Oh, goody, even Willingham's wife, who Pedro's such a fan of.
Yes, we need to waste more of Laura Bailey in this.
It's about time. Let's get this day started.
Classic.
And yeah, they still
Yeah,
don't explain why
get
Knack
used to
never
this, Shiroi,
talks when he's
because,
The
tiny.
adventure begins.
The Knack is so poorly written. Like every time he tries to do a one-liner, it always comes across as just lame.
The problem with Knack is that they can't seem to decide whether or not, oh, we want him to be the stoic robot who answers to his masters, or, hey, we want him to be the wisecracker. I mean, I've seen this joke done better in so many ways.
As
Even
a
as
result,
early
the
as
Knack
Q.
doesn't really have a personality.
No, our
I mean-
Dark Large Other One was going to put it best. Our main character barely qualifies as a character.
Yeah. I mean... And
Oh, by the way, Shira, another thing you will need to get used to easily is characters teleporting from one location to the next, because there's no way in hell the characters are following Knack in that proper way.
there
but
they
all
go.
of a sudden, boop, there you go, they show up.
now,
Okay.
Now, normally I wouldn't raise a stink about it, but let me remind you, this game is showing that it's going to be all immersive, all engaging and whatnot. So, look, I'm only critiquing it as much as they hyped it. Remember, this was supposed to be an atonement. Now, again, they were going to address all the problems, and this was supposed to make you feel like you were in the action. And you can tell that they want you to feel like it's a breathing room because, hey, they got all these humans in the background, even though you can't even really talk to them. It's like, come on, guys. Sonic Unleashed ran loops around you back in 2008, before you even came out.
Oh yeah, and on a more positive, yeah, just like it was,
Right, positive.
just like we were promised. Yes, there's a lot more platforming in this game, and it's pretty fine for what it is.
How sad is it that Pedro is to be the positive one of us?
by yourself.
Don't worry, Joe. We'll get be occasions for negativity on all
Oh,
sides.
trust me, Jova.
I know,
I
it's just
don't
like-
trust me, Jova. I don't like this game at all. I'm just trying to.
Oh no! I get stuck. Normally, I'm the one who tries to be positive,
Oh.
seeing both ends of
Oh,
the spectrum.
goblins, of
Oh
course.
no, guys! A goblin with an axe, and yes, these are serious threats. As is typical of Knack, depending on how big you are, you may get damaged.
Yeah, but fortunately, unlike the first game, the enemies don't always scale up with you. You can there's actually there's a lot. It's a lot more balance in that regard, in the sense that again, combine that with the much better health system, and of course the sun energy giving you an extra life bar of sorts when you get right down to it.
Yeah.
This game is way easier than the first one. You won't have the same this game is pretty easy. So
unfortunately, with that comes another issue. You're starting to see a running pattern here, Shiroi. For every problem that they address, a new one arises.
It's like one step forward, two backward.
which problem are you mentioning specifically, Jova?
The fact that in making this game easier, they make it way too easy to the point where even a baby might be insulted with how easy
Not just
this is.
in that case, if there's no challenge, it becomes a chore, then.
Now look, just because a sequel is easier doesn't mean that, it's a bad thing. Like, Crash Bandicoot 2 and 3 are technically easier than Crash Bandicoot 1, but that's because, they add in stuff
But a lot
that's
of Crash
proper.
1's difficulty was unfair.
Yeah.
Exactly. This does not do it right. This makes things easier, but one, it does it by including stuff that should have been in the first game, and two, it goes even beyond that. Like, you will get, hey, do you want to try again? Or they'll give you hints for some of the most basic puzzles, even if you put it on a certain setting. Like, yeah, sure, they stoop to David Cage's stupidity in that, hey, if you don't choose, the hardest setting, the game will be a cakewalk.
To be fair, Java, in some cases, in these particular round, they become useful as Pedro needed them to progress.
Lovely. And his brother was about to suicide?
As we'll see later.
Why was your brother trying to jump
See
to
the thing.
there?
It's kind of hard to explain if you're not playing it. But the problem with this game, and by extension the first game, is that these games are so mind-numbingly boring that my brain literally becomes half asleep while I'm playing, to the point where when the game does ask me to use it, my brain is half asleep, so it takes me twice as long to catch up with the puzzles. It's.
Okay, I know that it's giving them way too much credit, but imagine if that was actually the reason why they included those hits, because they thought people's brains would turn to mush.
Why no doctor today? He said he'd join us.
Yeah, why isn't Doctor
We
here?
couldn't afford his actor.
Oh, something came up. Well, actually, he is in this game, Jova. So.
Yeah, but not as much, which is.
Well, yeah, both Dr. Vargas and Laura Bailey's character don't have a total of 5 minutes of screen time in this game. So. Yeah, so which is fine by me because
they found a way to explain that away, then I guess.
Consider Dr. Vargas was an asshole, I guess that's fine. I mean, Lucas was the one likable character in the first game, so making him the protagonist is a good idea in paper.
And Ryder gave the idea of the kind of guy. Don't worry, Joe. Don't worry.
That's the thing, Pedro. They ruined Lucas in this game. Okay. Lucas was not much to write home about in the first game, but he was one of the better characters by virtue that he was a character that made sense, called out stupidity for being stupid at work. And he actually did have some good lines, although it was weird how they were kind of hyping up this thing where that necklace of his supposedly is something of his mother's, but we're not even really gonna address that.
It's this thing that's been very prevalent in the recent 10 years of gaming that I've noticed, and I've decided to call it the SAS syndrome, which is this case where a game is full of characters that are either terrible or just bland, but there's the one character it's a character that on its own merits is not that. Oh, hold on.
And now through the goblin-infested forest.
A great explorer like me would expect.
That was one of the best lines Lucas will have in this game.
Speaking of Ryder, what happened to that relationship that you had with?
We're going to address it later too.
You mean the relationship that literally was birthed out of him saving her from battle lava and him carrying her unconscious body to
There you
town
go,
that apparently
teleportation.
was formed in between games? That's right, Troy. There was a romance between William's character and Jennifer Hale's character. You know, the one that tried to kill and poison Knack right
722
before she
for the
like,
first.
died.
Anyway, this particular mechanic is exactly what you think. When you get to it, you can teleport to the other blue thing. So basically, just press R1 when you get to these. But yeah, like I was saying, yeah, when you get right down to it, Lucas is nothing to write home about as a character. Even in the first game, the reason why he stood out so much as a like an infinitely better character is because everybody around him was so bland or terrible that Lucas kind of Lucas's mediocrity became exponentially better by comparison.
That and Lucas actually did get some things done right in the first game. Like, he actually did help out with a certain plan. Yeah, he was the one who actually formed plans better than Vargas, the brilliant genius and whatnot. And he was actually the one who roused people to get the heck up.
It's kind of it's a similar thing with for example, Dr. Lautrec also had this problem, not with one character but with like 3 characters. Like I like in Dr. Lautrec, I liked Sophie, Claude, and Milady. The problem is that not that they're like amazing characters or anything, but again, Lautrec was such an unlockable douchebag that the others, of course, became a lot more tolerable by comparison. Again, it's this thing.
That went easy for you, Pedro, because I didn't like I didn't like either Milady on her own. So there was even that. It was even worse to me.
I actually did like Milady and Claude.
If anything, because they were the only characters who were written with some kind of humanity. Aside from Sophie, of course.
I don't know, Jova. Whatever. It's a huge topic again for another time. But the point being, the Says is that character that in a group of assholes, he stood out to be at least have some decent common sense.
I'm now trademarking it. From this one and from henceforth, this should be known as the Saz
tropes. You know who to credit.
The Saz trope. There
Wait, maybe we could make a TV trope on this called that.
Yes.
But yeah,
Whatever.
But yeah, that's a weird thing though. Like, this is almost like an inflected version of what happened to Saz. See, Saz was better liked than Lightning, so of course, Tori, I'ma ruin him. This is weird though. Lucas was better liked, so here he's actually made kind of the co-star of this game.
So yeah, just like in the first game, the treasure chests that are hidden that you can get items. So yeah, you can find as many hidden gadgets and relics as you can, and when you get some of them, you can build a new upgrade that will, however, fortunately, unlike the first game, this is yet another improvement, there's not any RNG. The gadgets are always in the exact same place at all times. So basically, it's a matter of exploration. In order to build a specific gadget, you have to find the specific parts which are at fixed places. You don't have to complete the game over and over and over and just hope you get the right pieces.
Oh, this is the perfect time. Shiroi. Bit of context. During our playthrough of the original Knack game, Pedro actually managed to get a gadget, for as much frustrating as it is. Guess
just
what?
One.
Guess what? The gadget he got was one that would allow him to detect relics. Now, Shiroi, relics are the things that you pick up, as essentially they're the things that are everywhere. Essentially, Shiroi, Pedro got the equivalent of if you got something that would detect Wampa fruit in a Crash Bandicoot game.
Pretty much.
Right.
Like, Shiroi, imagine, it's like if you needed a ring detector in a Sonic game, or mushroom detector in a
Or a
Mario
gem detector.
game.
More like a
Or
coin
you mean
detector,
a
but
coin detector in a Mario game, I should say.
The point being, it's like, oh, man, Knack 1 had some useless power-ups.
Oh, and the power-ups in this game aren't much better either. I'll get into that. But, yeah,
Witty dialogue.
another case... there was another case that I was thinking of.
See what I mean? Moments like this, like, okay, in the original game, Knack would have been able to climb up that no matter what size. Yet here, you gotta change the small Knack. Again, it doesn't seem that bad, but it gets frustrating with how much you have to switch back and forth just to pad out any little second of gameplay this is.
It's
Sorry if
another example.
I'm getting a little uber negative ahead of time, folks. Let's just say later into this
Jova,
game,
nobody cares about Knack. Don't worry, nobody's gonna mind.
True. What am I saying? Most people who got this game got it for free, and others didn't really buy it if sales or anything to go.
Nobody
by.
really cares at this point. Anyway,
well, I'm sure Sony will for Knack III, baby.
Well,
well,
it's, like I said, Joe, my primary theory is that the main reason why Mark is allowed to make these games is because, you know, like after making the PS4 a success, he gets to make the games he wants to make.
and no one in Sony has the balls to actually tell him, Mark, you should stop with this.
I think it's weird though. It's like, well, almost everything else Mark has worked heavily on has been a success. It's just the only notable failures are these two
If anything,
games.
Java D showcased to me the fact, once again, another proof on the theory that apparently creators' projects most of the time just don't work.
So what the heck is Japan Studios' excuse, though?
I have no. But
I think it's
again, we were probably starving for actual work on their own, and this is what the Sony.
I don't think it's so much that, too. I mean, there have been plenty of creator projects that have worked out fine. The problem is that, like I've said, my diagnosis is that Mark is a great programmer / designer, but he's not good. But he's good when he's taking orders. He's not good at actually giving orders. That's my diagnosis. Like that's what I get the feel of. He's not good at being in charge. He needs to be. Someone needs to be like have a good head on their shoulders and be a good born leader. And that's not something that Mark is, from what I can tell. Like, he's better at following orders.
And in this case, he even had a co-writer, so there's not even that excuse in a sense of, oh, he was just bad writing. No, I mean, to be fair, yes, I would argue that the story in the God of War games is not that spectacularly detailed. It's a good Greek tragedy, as it is, but it doesn't disperse too much in details, like in a game that would be more focused for a story, like, say, The Last of Us. Here, so when you're getting a writer like Marianne for a game like this, it should at least suffice, you know, have at the very least the bare minimum. But no, instead we get this.
Speaking of a story, I would like to point out one of the first of many plot holes. So, Ryder brought us here because he wants to show us something. So here's my question. Okay, Ryder, you want to show us something, so how did you not know that there's all these traps? A freaking gate that's blocking us from getting to what you apparently have seen and want to show us. How did you get through all the goblin traps and whatnot? And, you know, how did you actually set off what he's going to have to set off in order to actually see this thing?
Even if you argue that the goblins arrived after he left, that doesn't excuse a lot of the normal contraption when we're just lying down there.
Yeah.
Not only that, folks, wait till you see what we actually have to do, because, yes, certain things physically have to be done to actually see this thing he wants to show us. So, first problem with the story out of the gate, Ryder, how do you actually...
Yeah,
how have you seen this?
Okay, see, the way that the characters climb down that kind of vine, that kind of steep, that was a good way to integrate the whole teleportation thing. The characters just found another way to get to your location. The problem is that it's a probably unique, if not extremely rare, occasion when they do that. So don't get used to it.
I just remembered I just remembered the other example again. Lola in Fair and Seraph has some really good moments here and there, but it's not like she's like an amazing character or anything. But she comes across as amazing because literally every other individual in that game is a fucking a monstrous abomination that needs to be destroyed for the good of mankind. So okay, fine, and Galdo's okay as well, but even he, Galdo's even more
than the other ones.
But Galdo's actually more similar to Saz, now that I think about it, considering he gets ruined and brushed aside, just like Saz.
Let's see. When he's not turned evil, he dies a horrible death.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it here first. Trademarked by me, the Saz trope. TV tropes, get on it. So, and be sure to credit me.
Can't you edit that in yourself or no?
We'll see. See you, everybody.
See you for part 2.
See ya.